hello. That is the Citroen e-C3, which is our 2024 car of the year. Now, to be the Auto Express car of the year, you have to have some pretty special bits. So let's run you through them. I'm Jordan, and you're watching Auto Express. Now, believe it or not, the e-C3 is actually a numbers car. This car has an electric motor and a 44 kilowatt-hour battery and has a range of 199 miles on the WLTP cycle. However, it's also one of the most affordable electric cars on sale, starting at just £21,995, and that's what makes this car so special right now. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, yes, that's for the base model, which this car is not. And yes, okay, well, this car is actually the max car, which is £23,690. Externally anyway, they are completely identical, which means this is pretty much exactly what you're going to get for your £21,995. Now, this is a super mini. It is a B segment car, but it kind of gives you that SUV style stance thanks to it being a little taller off the road and having a few off-roady parts, things like the wheel arch surrounds and the roof rails. This car comes as standard with 17-inch alloy wheels, LED headlights, and a 10-inch touchscreen inside, plus electric heated and folding mirrors. And generally speaking, from a design perspective, this thing looks pretty slick. It's hardly groundbreaking. The shape isn't necessarily quite as modern or retro or futuristic or interesting, really, as some other cars that are on the way, but fundamentally, it's a pretty sound design. We really like these headlights and how they're sort of split into C shapes, and the fat new badge that sits within this sort of black bar along the grille. It's all pretty interesting. Along the side, as you can see, nothing really here to report that is too unusual. What's good to know is that these dual color options are standard across the range, as are some pretty snazzy LED taillights as well. From the back, it all looks pretty standard, but also pretty enduring. I don't think that this is going to date particularly quickly, and it doesn't look very unsophisticated, which some of its rivals can. That's your Sprint, although that is quite a lot cheaper. So generally speaking, we think that on the outside, Citroen has done a pretty good job of making this car feel and look a little bit more substantial than its price point would suggest. But the good news is that the same can be said about the interior as well. So the first thing that you'll notice about the interior is that it actually isn't quite as stark as you might have expected. It's got this fairly cool sort of multi-layered dashboard, which has a dot matrix information display, as you can see there, just below the windscreen, plus a very handy 10-inch touchscreen, which is standard across both models. The steering wheel is compact, almost Peugeot-like in its shape, which means that you actually have to peer over it to have a look at the main display. But generally speaking, everything is very ergonomic, and it's actually quite easy to see out of as well. In the center console, you can see that there are a separate set of climate control functions. Here, this top spec car has auto climate as opposed to manual climate control, which means that it gets this sort of array of buttons and a little screen. The standard car has rotary knobs, which we have absolutely no problem with. There is a little bit of glossy black plastic in the center console, as you can see there, and the main gear selector switch is the same as you'll find on pretty much every single other Stellantis product with this sort of basis, but inherently things in here are actually pretty good despite the price point. Other things that we like in here include things like the upholstered dashboard, which we think is really nice, and the seats are also really comfortable as well. And on this top spec car, they're finished in this sort of two-tone, pretty funky looking finish, which we think actually makes it feel a little plusher in here than you'd expect. In terms of equipment levels, the Max does give you a few extra bits and bobs. And now they include rear electric windows. Yes, that's right, the base model of this car only has front electric windows. I don't think I've seen that in a while. And it also comes with a heated windscreen, a heated steering wheel, and heated front seats as well, which is lovely. The steering wheel is also finished in this sort of leather-like finish. It's not real leather, but do you know what? It feels pretty good. And in general, the whole cabin feels about right for a B-segment Super Mini. You would have absolutely no idea that this is a massively price-leading vehicle, which, you know what, is a pretty good component. There is plenty of space in the front, unsurprisingly, thanks to fairly compact dashboard that sits really quite snugly against the firewall. Space in the back, however, is a little bit tighter. That said though, this is a B-segment car, and compared to something like a Renault 5, it is definitely better. Now, I'm actually sat just behind myself, which is a little bit tight, but that said, I am quite short, which means that this is probably a little bit more generous than you'll find for most drivers. However, there is a handy pocket for your phone up here, and there's even a couple of USB-C points, which is a nice little bonus. The fact that this car is available with a petrol engine as well, which we'll get onto in a second, does mean that there is a small hump on the floor, so it's not completely flat. However, generally speaking, it is pretty good for a B-segment car of this size and of this price. Okay, just a quick little reminder whilst we're sat in the back seat defrosting a little bit because it's freezing outside. Did you know you can sell your car on Auto Express? That's right, you can jump online at the link in the description below and get a proper valuation based on our experts, because we know what your car's worth, because that's what we do. As for boot space, this car's slightly bigger stance than a B segment Super Mini means that there is quite a lot of space back here. It's 310 litres and is a pretty good size and shape, but it does have a pretty substantial load lip. I'd say probably about 5 or 6 inches. You can also see that this car has got its cable just sat in the boot, and that's because there is literally nowhere else to put it. There is no front boot and there is also no underfloor storage, so that is something to take into consideration. But this is a pretty inexpensive car, so we can overlook that for now. It does have folding seats. They've split in a 60-40 split, but they're not flat. Again, not at the end of the world because of this car's price point. Okay, time to talk about some techie bits, and we'll start under the bonnet where, as mentioned, there is no boot, but an electric motor. Now that motor is actually worth 111 brake horsepower, which is plenty for urban driving and will also keep you on the motorway without too much trouble. The 0 to 60 is about 10.9 seconds, so this is no high performance EV, but again, for its use case, we think that this is plenty for the kind of driver that is going to be driving this sort of thing. Now the reason why the electric motor is mounted under the bonnet and not in the axle line, as you'll find elsewhere, is because this car is also available with a hybrid engine. Now that hybrid engine does bring the price down to $17,995, but it's only available in the base model car. Now, that petrol engine is a 1.2 litre 3-cylinder and has a mild hybrid system attached, and it does 99 brake horsepower and about 50 miles to the gallon. It's also worth mentioning that it's automatic only. There is no manual option for this car right now. Okay, let's talk tech for a hot minute, because all cars come with this standard 10-inch touchscreen control panel. As standard, it is pretty responsive and the resolution is not that bad either. There is no volume control, that is an issue. However, it is controlled up here on the left-hand side, and as you can see, you can actually use this little ridge here to anchor your hand and make things a little easier. This car has embedded navigation. That is obviously the top spec car, but we know that most of you will probably use the embedded CarPlay and Android Auto. And as you can see, it works completely fine. There's no real frills to it, but we all know that CarPlay generally works really well, so long as the system is quick, and it is. If there is one thing to mention though, it's that this car's twin, which is the Fiat Grande Panda, does feel a little bit more imaginative in here than this car. There's more interesting materials, there's more interesting design, and while inherently there is nothing wrong with this cabin, it doesn't really have much flair. There is another conundrum as well, and that's this little screen here that we see below the windscreen, although very effective, isn't quite as informative as the one you'll find on a Grande Panda. And while it doesn't feel particularly dated now, we have a feeling that in the next few years it might well seem a little bit old-fashioned. As for this pretty funky looking steering wheel, as you can see, it has our cruise control functions on one side and our media controls on the other, and everything works pretty clearly. It has nice normal indicator stalks, which is something that you can't really take for granted these days, and it also has these very important buttons here. Now these disable your active safety functions if wanted quite easily without having to fiddle through a screen, which, trust us, is a nice thing to do if you really don't like all of that binging and bonging. You'll also notice there's a key. That's right, this car doesn't have a starter button, it has a key, which is a bit odd for an EV, but you know what, it's kind of retro and we love it. And in terms of storage, things are pretty good around here. There is a wireless phone charger just there, which is very handy, a couple of cup holders, a little center cubby here, which is of a fairly compact size, but not too bad, and another USB port here, which is quite useful. So there's quite a few of them around. You'll also find a pretty decent set of door pockets, and they're white backlit, which means that you will be able to find things quite easily, although they are not padded. Again, that's more of a golf thing, isn't it? There is also this pretty funky looking little tab here. Now what that does is that allows a pretty easy anchor point if you're the sort of person that has your phone up on a cradle, so you don't have to put it up near the windscreen, and also so it won't get in the way of the dial pack. Now to drive, well, what is there to say? This car isn't really designed to be an absolute hauler around the bends, and generally speaking, it doesn't do it very well. It is an car, more of a device than something that you would jump into on a weekend just to go for a spin. However, it is very comfortable, and that is something that we can attribute to a couple of things, both Citroen's adherence to nice, soft, comfortable suspension, and also some pretty supportive seats. The steering isn't actually quite as light as you would imagine, which is quite a nice surprise, which means that it doesn't feel entirely floaty down the motorway, and while refinement isn't all that good at high speeds, again, this is more of an urban car, so it's something that we can overlook. Generally speaking, this car drives about as well as you would expect it for the price point, but no better. It is a touch more responsive, weirdly, than the Fiat Grande Panda, but neither car is a particular firecracker. Now, we're yet to actually drive the hybrid version. That is coming along later this year, but as it stands, this is a perfectly fine car to drive for the sort of people that are going to want to buy one. Before we finish, let's go on with the USB count. We've got 1, 2, down there somewhere, and 2 at the back, which means that this pretty small, inexpensive B segment car has 4 USB-Cs, which is pretty good. So, where does this leave us with the e-C3? Well, the reason we like this car so much is pretty simple. It offers a really good range figure for not a lot of money and is comfortable and spacious to boot.